All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Lindsay Bierman, the Executive Director and CEO here at the Exploratorium, and it is a tremendous honor to welcome Speaker Pelosi, her team, and members of the press to our Fisher Bay Observatory here at Pier 15 in San Francisco. We're here to celebrate the passage of the Bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. This is an historic legislation that will drive innovation, foster critical scientific research, and inspire a new generation of Americans to get excited about science and technology. That generation is represented here today by our explainers in their orange vests. For more than 50 years, the Exploratorium has drawn curious young people from diverse backgrounds to start their careers as explainers. And today, we invite anyone from anywhere to encounter the wonders of the world through accessible, hands-on, interactive exhibits and experiments. When the Exploratorium was founded by Frank Oppenheimer in the 1960s, the federal government dedicated about 2% of GDP toward research and development. In the decades since, that allocation has been cut in half, making the field more exclusive and more homogeneous in the process. The CHIPS and Science Act helps to reverse course by reinvesting in America, in our youth, our workforce, and the industries of the future. It will establish a Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate at the National Science Foundation and allow more people, especially those from historically excluded communities, to benefit from STEM education and professional development opportunities. The CHIPS and Science Act demonstrates our shared commitment to the educators, inventors, entrepreneurs, researchers, engineers, and technologists of tomorrow. The Exploratorium has long been the home of the NSF-funded and other federal science agency-funded initiatives dedicated to inclusivity in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. We applaud this transformative legislation and look forward to a future of expanded impact with our partners in government. With that, please join me in welcoming Speaker Nancy Pelosi to the podium.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, for your leadership here at the Exploratorium, for your hospitality this morning, and especially for making the Exploratorium really a model for us to pass legislation predicated on the fact that young people are your explainers here. Again, 50 years ago, when the Exploratorium was established at the Palace of Fine Arts, shortly after that time, I began bringing my children and then my grandchildren, and what a joy it is to be here, to see it in this setting, in a much enlarged space, with a much enlarged mission. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you to the supporters of the Exploratorium. I remember we had the night when this opened up, and then we had the night when they first had the lights on the bridge. We had many, shall we say, thresholds to cross here, scientifically as well as educationally, and they're the same in some ways. Here we are for this legislation. I'm honored to be here with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. In some circles, this is known as the Eshoo Chip Bill. And thank you. And as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee of Jurisdiction, she had a very important role in this, as well as other Californians, Doris Matsui, and some others as well. I want to also say how pleased I am to be with Keith Yamamoto once again and thank him for his leadership. He is now the president-elect of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. That's pretty exciting, and just so exciting for our region and our leadership in science here. Thank you, Keith, for being with us. I call him Keith, Dr. Yamamoto, Mr. President of the... and then Gabby Cruz-Thompson, who's Director of University Research Collaboration at Intel. The private sector was very important in helping us pass this legislation. And Patrick, I call him Patrick, but Pat Gelsinger, the CEO, was relentless on this, not only in his own advocacy, but in mobilizing other supports to remove all doubt that the bill would pass. We were not going away. But we wanted to pass not just the CHIPS bill, we wanted the science piece of it as well. And Dr. Sue J. King Liu, Dean of College of Engineering at UC Berkeley, we actually had an event there with Barbara Lee and Patrick. I can't remember how many months ago it was, but again, to focus on the need to pass this legislation. So you see people here who have been at the intellectual resource for this legislation. Actually, Lindsay gave a very good description of what its vision is. I will associate myself with his remarks. And just to add this, we're talking about this president, President Biden, has been very, very committed to diversity and inclusion. And you talked about that, inclusion. That's so important. If we are going to be preeminent in the world, we have to have the full benefit of the best minds wherever they may be. And that requires education and again, investment in research. We were, when the exploratorium was established, we had just had 2 men on the moon, and we were preeminent in the world, and the president uses the moonshot as his vision for so many things, from curing cancer to being preeminent in the world in every scientific respect. And that was it. And then we stopped really making the priority of investment in education, scientific, the STEM, research, and the rest. Norma Gusson, he had the gathering storm, how other countries followed our model, and now they were exceeding us in all of these areas. So we have to have a recommitment for our preeminence in the world, and that's important. But what's more important is the importance of each and every child in our country, every person, to know that the beauty is in the mix, the diversity of ethnicity and the rest, gender-wise and the rest, so important. Now, on the gender, let me say this. Today is the day that the Equal Rights Amendment passed. We celebrate next week when it took effect. It was enacted today, it took effect. So this week is sort of a bookends of women in the workforce, women to vote, women, the preeminence. And that's one of the things that this legislation does as well, is to recognize the full role that women will play in all of this. It's pretty exciting. Now, I want to give credit to my chair of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, Eddie Bernice, Congresswoman, Madam Chair Eddie Bernice Johnson of Texas, of Dallas, Texas. Leader in the African-American community, one dedicated to science, and research and education and how they are all connected and how essential they are to our preeminence as a society as well as a country. So she chairs Science, Space, and Technology. There is no such committee in the Senate. So this House piece of science is largely written from the standpoint of science, space, and technology. And something that Lindsay said reminded me of this quote. If you go to the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, on the wall, can you believe this, is a quote of Alfred Lord Tennyson. There was a time when they were combining the Romantic poets and science. They wanted the poets to write more about science. They wanted science to speak more poetically so that people would understand. And this is the quote. "For I dipped into the future, far as a human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that would be." And that's what we want every child to feel. So I know there's some STEM folks here. so important. In California, of course, we say STEAM. We put the arts in there, as I just did with Tennyson. But this is pretty exciting. And it's of itself important, but it is also just turbocharges our manufacturing. Thousands of, either 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, depending on the car, chips in a car. So when we talk about electric cars, we're talking about protecting the environment. So this is, everything in nature is connected, and there's a good demonstration of it is this important legislation. So thank you all for being the intellectual resource you are, for your community connection to all of us. Nice to see you again. And to make sure we follow through and do it in a way that delivers on the promise of inclusion, of diversity, again, regionally as well, so that throughout the country, people will have the opportunity to contribute to the greatness of our country, to the health of our people, to, again, protection of our environment in every way. When people ask me about solutions, I always say science, 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 and science. So let's hear it for science. Thank you all so much for being here today. Can I go in? And now I have the privilege of yielding to my distinguished colleague representing Silicon Valley in the Congress of the United States, a real champion for science, 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 and science, and so many things, whether it's the environment, whether it's healthcare, whether it's technology, whatever the field. Congresswoman Eshoo is the person I'll say, what does Anna think? Anna is going to tell us what she thinks. Thank you for being with us this morning. Madam Chair, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo.
Well, thank you, Speaker Pelosi, for bringing us all together, and for the Exploratorium for hosting us. So good morning to all of you. You're a beautiful sight, and this setting is magical. It really is. There really can't be a better place to celebrate the CHIPS and Science Act than right here at the Exploratorium, the Bay Area's home for lovers of science and ingenuity. So this is a marvelous place to celebrate an extraordinary piece of legislation that is now the law. The CHIPS and Science Act makes historic investments in domestic research and development to fuel the kind of American innovation on display here. The law establishes a Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate at the National Science Foundation to focus on the fields of advanced computing, advanced communications technology, advanced energy technologies, quantum information technologies, and biotechnology. The law invests $10 billion in regional innovation and technology hubs nationwide, bringing together local leaders, education, business leaders, labor leaders, and government to develop technology that is made and used in their communities. And these hubs will create jobs and fuel local economies. This new law is the most significant legislation by the Science Committee in its 63-year history, and the most substantial investment in American research and technology in generations. The legislation also invests, as the Speaker said, significantly in STEM education and training from K-12 to community colleges to undergraduate and graduate education, shaping the next generation of innovators. And importantly, the law funds one of the most substantial scientific inventions in centuries, semiconductor chips, which are the basis of nearly every modern technology. including cars, cell phones, appliances, medical devices, and so much more. As many of you know, my Silicon Valley congressional district takes its name from the material used to make semiconductors. But today, very few semiconductors are made in the Valley or anywhere in the United States. We were once a leader in chip manufacturing, but the U.S. now produces only 1/10 of the semiconductors used worldwide, impacting nearly every aspect of our economy. Semiconductors, some call it the oil of the 21st century. And as long as we rely on foreign countries for such an essential item, our national security is actually at risk. That's why this legislation has $52 billion in funding to relieve the semiconductor shortage, and obviously why it is so important. So bringing chip manufacturing back to the United States and securing our supply chain is the key to strengthening our national economy and maintaining American leadership in innovation. I'm pleased that the law includes my legislation to ensure the manufacturing equipment and materials for chips are also made domestically. This investment, obviously, is going to create good-paying jobs, improve the resiliency of the supply chain, and reduce America's dependence on foreign manufacturers. Because of this new law, the future, I think, of technology will be invented and manufactured in America. Now I'd like to yield to one of America's most distinguished and respected scientists, Dr. Keith Yamamoto. He is UCSF's first Vice Chancellor for Science Policy and Strategy. He is the Executive Vice Dean of the School of Medicine and Professor of Cellular and Molecular Pharmacology at UCSF. And he is one of the individuals that on a daily basis, and the speaker and I can certainly attest to this, that influences and shapes science policy at the state and national levels. He really is a gift in our country. Dr. Keith Yamamoto.
Thank you so much, and thank all of you for coming. This is a wonderful, happy event that we're celebrating today, and I really want to thank Speaker Pelosi and Congresswoman Eshoo, Chair Eshoo. She chairs the Health Subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House, and has really moved the ball consistently, but it's certainly in the context of this bill, really moving it forward and shaping it in the way that it has finally evolved after a long period of evolution. I want to step back and as Lindsay did, put this historic act, and it is historic, in historical context, and then say a bit about its significance for science policy and its role in enabling scientists and engineers to do their amazing work in new and more impactful ways. So a little bit deeper history than Lindsay gave us. 65 years ago, federal support for science and technology was set at 0.8% of GDP. That was 1957, 65 years ago. 1957 was notable because the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. And that set off a kind of a reassessment of U.S. support in Congress and in the public of U.S. support for science and technology. We've been beaten to orbit by the Reds. And so by 1964, just 7 years later, support for science and technology and for STEM education had increased nearly 2.5-fold relative to GDP. Broad investment across science and technology and STEM education that fueled decades of economic prosperity, national security, and advances in health and the quality of life. But over those ensuing years and decades, we sort of lost our way. We sort of took the source of that prosperity and security for granted. And the federal science and technology investment declined. And it's now less than it was, proportionally less than it was in 1957, under 0.7% of GDP. Our graduate student and postdoc classes are increasingly arriving from outside of the United States, indicating that U.S. STEM programs from K through undergraduate are not motivating students to enter these exciting fields. And increasingly, the trainees then leave the United States after they complete their training, implying that support to launch their research careers may be stronger elsewhere. The painful irony is that at this time of enormous opportunity for discovery and for advancing those discoveries to great economic and societal impact, our relative investment in science and technology and STEM education has slipped to 2, 3, 4-fold below that of other countries that have learned from watching our past that science and technology is a path to prosperity and security. With increasingly intense competition from other countries, a widening opinion, not just here in the U.S., but globally, is that we may be ceding our long-held science and technology leadership position. The CHIPS and Science Act is a powerful statement that the U.S. recognizes that it is past time, to reverse that slide. It's a massive bill, 1,000 pages for those of you who've had a chance to look at it. I'll give you a taste of just one of the 6 major sections, Title IV, that powerfully illustrates to me the scope and depth of the bill's impact on science policy and on research and STEM education and on the ways that scientists and engineers can actually do their work. Title IV describes the creation of the National Engineering Biology Research and Development Initiative. It defines and supports research at the intersection, a growing intersection, between biology and physics, chemistry, computer science, and engineering, to accelerate knowledge discovery in new ways and technological innovation, including novel biomanufacturing approaches that enable end products to be produced faster, cheaper, and environmentally clean. It will coordinate and support research by teams of investigators coming from different science and engineering disciplines, traditionally supported by different federal agencies that don't interact well together, and from academia, government, industry, nonprofit research institutes, enabling them to merge and synergize their skills, insights, and methodologies. It will expand the number of researchers, educators, and trainees in engineering biology, developing exciting new curricula and research experiences for secondary, undergraduate, and graduate students, and diversifying the workforce through explicit outreach to historically black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, and minority-serving institutions. Multiple federal departments will contribute to and benefit from this initiative, all coordinated by the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Those agencies include, of course, the NSF, the NIH, or in the Health and Human Services, the DOE, the Department of Defense, the EPA, NASA, Agriculture, Commerce, and others. So finally, the initiative's support for research and technological innovation will extend to translation and commercialization of the new knowledge by supporting startup of new companies or partnerships with established industry. And we'll hear from Gabby about some of that. The end products of the initiative's efforts will predict, treat, cure, or better yet, prevent disease, mitigate climate change with clean biofuels and energy production and storage technologies, revolutionize agriculture practices and food production, and much more. So this element of the CHIPS and Science Act illustrates for me a powerful federal science and technology policy framework that is enunciated by the Act as a whole, that establishes a continuum across research disciplines by coordinating the efforts across agency boundaries and partnering with the private sector, while enriching and diversifying our trainee and professional workforce. It connects basic and knowledge discovery with technological innovation that produces novel and useful applications of that knowledge and puts a sharp focus on advancing our economy, strengthening our security, and addressing challenges in health, energy, environment, and food. Eddie Bernice Johnson was just spectacular in framing those imperatives. So let me stop there and introduce Gabriela Cruz Thompson, who is the Senior Director of University Research Collaboration at Intel Labs. Gabby.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Yamamoto, for the introduction. I am honored here today to be with you. And of course, I want to thank you, Speaker Pelosi. I want to thank you, Chairwoman Eshoo. Thank you very much for your leadership, for passing the CHIPS Act, for passing also science, and of course, for all that you do for the state of California and the nation. My name is Gabriela Cruz Thompson. I work at Intel Labs. Intel Labs is a research organization inside Intel, and our job is to dream up and create the future. As part of the role at Intel Labs, I am in charge of engaging with university research teams as well as universities for education to ensure we have the right workforce ready to come in and be part of our team. The landmark CHIPS and Science Act is the most significant science and technology legislation in my lifetime. It's been said before here, but I don't want to not mention it because it is really a remarkable leap forward for American leadership in innovation and technology and science. So thank you. Intel is thrilled the CHIPS and Science Act has been enacted into law. And now more than ever, we are committed to restoring end-to-end leadership, innovation, manufacturing here in the U.S. The positive impacts of the legislation extend far and wide. A study from the Semiconductor Industry Association found that incentives on domestic semiconductor manufacturing would add 280,000 permanent jobs in the U.S. economy. In my role, I am most excited about growing the technical skills and engineering expertise needed to operate the new Intel fabs that we've announced. Also, to make sure that we're training the future manufacturing workforce that supports our materials and all of that equipment that we purchase from our suppliers, making sure that the supply chain is secure and it's here in the U.S. I'm also excited because it's funding research and it's funding the education of master's and PhD degrees. And we hope that those are going to be the future members of Intel Labs, the future members of all the research organizations in all the companies in high tech and semiconductors. This is why we, Intel, are working with research universities and community colleges, and why earlier this year, Intel announced a $100 million breakthrough program in partnership with the National Science Foundation. We plan to expand the pipeline of technical expertise, ensure that it's diverse, ensures that it represents the society in which we work. I had the honor last year to testify before the House Science Committee and in support of the National Science Foundation Future Act. I am thrilled to see today that education and workforce and research, and of course, the National Technology an Innovation Partnership Directorate has been created at NSF. That is the directorate that we're planning to be partnering with. We have been partnering with NSF for now over 8 years in mutual agreements. But now we're hoping that this will invite many other companies to participate in those partnerships. We are also very excited to imagine and dream up what will be the National Semiconductor Technology Center. And of course, that is part of what was included in the CHIPS and Science Act. These provisions will further advance research efforts and enable technology innovation to flourish once again here in the U.S. And if you allow me to talk about my own hobby, I'm a runner whenever I can run, and of course, I'm back of the pack runner, not front of the pack. But I feel today, my ankle, yeah. I found a little step last week when I was running. So today, I feel like today we are celebrating finishing up a 10K race. When you run 10 kilometers, 6 miles, you do have to train, you do have to prepare, you have to sleep the night before, you have to nourish yourself appropriately for weeks, and then you finish the race and you celebrate with friends and, cheering crowds normally. So I feel that that is what's happening today. But tonight, I'm going home, I'm resting, and tomorrow morning early, I'll lace up and we will be ready to run the marathon. Because this is a back-to-back situation, and we're going to be in a long haul working with universities, working with community colleges, and working with the federal agencies to ensure collaboration. I'm excited. We're heading in this direction to ensure the U.S. builds the leading workforce for semiconductor manufacturing. And now it's my honor to introduce a collaborator of ours, Dr. Sujay King, Dean of the College of Engineering at University of California, Berkeley, and a member of Intel's Board of Directors.
Thank you, Gabby, for that kind introduction. And good morning, everyone. I'd first like to thank Speaker Pelosi for inviting me to join this celebration of this landmark, the passage of the landmark CHIPS and Science Act, and also to express appreciation to Congresswoman Eshoo for her leadership to make this moment possible. It's really an honor for me to join this the stage here with such distinguished speakers. Now, we just heard Gabby talk about the incentives that Intel and other semiconductor companies now have with the CHIPS Act funding to build new fabs in the United States. I'm here to express excitement about another provision of the bill, one that will bolster development of a highly skilled domestic semiconductor workforce to work in those fabs and to fuel innovation for the future. This is vital for the CHIPS Act programs to succeed and for the U.S. microelectronics ecosystem to thrive. Today, there is a shortage of qualified candidates to fill available positions in the semiconductor industry. And with over a dozen new fabs on the horizon, which will come online in the next few years, the need for additional engineers, technicians, and factory workers is only going to increase dramatically. As Gabby indicated, hundreds of thousands of new jobs to be filled. Now, it takes years to educate students and train them to be ready to contribute to the semiconductor workforce. To be ready then, we need to start now. This is why the bipartisan bill establishes and appropriates $200 million to the CHIPS for America Workforce and Education Fund. Through the National Science Foundation, or NSF, this new funding will support the development and expansion of microelectronics education and training activities at all levels. And microelectronics education spans all STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, and math. The CHIPS and Science Act also authorizes the establishment of a national network to enhance and broaden participation in microelectronics education. I'm excited about that, especially because for the past year I have been co-leading a nationwide effort which is called the American Semiconductor Academy Initiative, to develop a vision for this national network, one that is not only collaborative but inclusive. America, as the melting pot, has a rich diversity of people. But if you look at the demographic profile of workers in the semiconductor industry today, it is not representative of our society. In other words, there is a lot of untapped talent in our country. Research shows that diverse engineering teams are more creative and effective because they comprise a wider range of viewpoints and skills, and hence they have greater collective intelligence. This can give our nation a competitive edge in technology innovation, but only if we fully unlock the potential of each and every individual team member. I applaud our nation's leaders for including provisions in the bill to promote the participation of minority-serving institutions, like including HBCUs, Hispanic-serving institutions, tribal colleges, and community colleges and trade colleges, to support STEM education in rural communities, and to combat sexual and gender-based bias and discrimination in STEM fields. It is a privilege for academics like myself to be able to work with and to learn from a diversity of bright and motivated students. So I'd like to share with you some thoughts from one of my former PhD students, Dr. Marie-Ange Ayoum Tagne, who emigrated here from Cameroon to pursue higher education in the United States, and she has worked in the tech industry for companies such as Intel, Amazon, and Yahoo. Just this week on LinkedIn, she reflected on the opportunities afforded to her through her education, which includes UC Berkeley. Marie-Ange shared her belief that America is still a land of opportunities, and that she is hopeful that as so long as we use our skills, talents, passion, and uniqueness for the greater good, we will leave a better America and a better world for the generations after us. May we all share this vision, poetic or not, and work together toward a better future for all. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And with that, Speaker Pelosi with closing remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you all. We have here quite an array of knowledge about this issue, vision fulfilled, some of it yet to be realized, all of it very important to America's preeminence in the world. From a security standpoint, as was mentioned, this is a national security piece of legislation, very essential to our national security. That's what our purpose is, to protect. That's the oath we take. From an economic standpoint, it's the prospects are pretty clear. But I also do want to say that at least 100,000 Davis-Bacon prevailing wage jobs are contained in this legislation. That's a giant step forward. And as Dr. Yamamoto said, is also opportunity for ownership, as Abby indicated as well, for ownership, for equity, for small businesses to, again, representing the beautiful diversity of our country. And so in terms of the economy, also, this is a fighter against inflation, because our dependence on supplies away from our country at a time of a COVID, enormous cost of transportation and the rest, supply was down, therefore costs were up. Let's make it in America so we have the resources right here. And other countries, I was in Taiwan. Taiwan's going to invest $25 billion in semiconductor in Texas and Arizona. We're doing 52. Other countries see the opportunity, again, the trained workforce and the rest. And then in terms of governance, which is so important, to do so in a way that is inclusive. I'll just end by saying this, and unfortunately I've been called away, but I want any questions you have about all of this. We have much more knowledgeable people to respond to them. And again, I thank all of you for being here. But I'm going to quote a Republican president, President Reagan, because one thing we didn't get in this bill, and Anna Eshoo has been trying for this since 2005 when we did your competitiveness bill. It's been very hard for us to get the appropriate immigration laws passed. As you indicated in your remarks, Doctor, you named a person and her experience and the rest. President Reagan made one of the best speeches on immigration. It was his last speech I will make as President of the United States. I want you to Google it and see it because it'll be much better than I presented here, and I'll be shorter. But he said America's preeminence in the world springs from the fact that we have always had all kinds of different people coming to our country. And if we ever close that door, we will fail to be preeminent in the world. Ronald Reagan, last speech I make, communicate a message to a country I love about immigration. So this is one of the unfinished pieces of this, and I won't go into why we don't have it just now. But in any event, this is a triumph that takes place in the context of just this. A couple of days ago, yesterday, the president, 2 days ago, the president signing the IRA, not to be confused with anything going on in Ireland, but the Inflation Reduction Act. In that bill, he has $60 billion for diversity as we meet the challenge of the climate crisis, directly connected, as you mentioned, to what we're doing here. So again, it's about inclusion. It's about investing in our children, our future, our education, in research. It's about doing so in a way that is respectful of great diversity of views. And we could not have done it without the intellectual resources, some of whom you see here, without the private sector enthusiasm for, because this needs to be a public-private partnership. And it couldn't happen without really the tremendous leadership of our president, Joe Biden. So I'm going to ask to be excused, but hope that if there are any questions that you have, you understand the tremendous resource that we have, whether it's in Congress or in science. And again, I want to thank Lindsey Bierman. Thank you, Lindsey, for your hospitality this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you.